Everything is personal right here. Everything is personal right here.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of Everything is Personal. And today, our guest is Eduardo Vitale. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. I'm super excited to be on, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, cool. I got past the first hurdle, which was getting your name right. So maybe I can continue on a good note.
Well, it's a struggle for a lot of people, so don't even worry about it.
I wanted to ask you a question about the gym and people working out, just in general, because you have this whole thing with people start scheduling, doing their New Year's resolutions in January, and I'm going to go to the gym. So you have this pattern that people go to work out, and they really want to take care of them. They want to do something with their life, and they want to improve. So January, you go to the gym, parking lot's packed. February, still crowded. March rolls around, I'd say 25% less. By the time April, May, and summertime rolls around, you have half parking lot filled. So what do you think is a way that you can use technology, incentives to motivate people so that we can hold them accountable to their own goals?
Yeah, so I think one of the main problems that people generally view with motivation, not like exhibiting on your own, but like just how we view it as a society, is that we treat it like a monolith, insofar that we kind of view that everyone has the same things that would work for them motivational wise. So this is something that I've kind of found working in the space that I do, is that, so this is one instance of where motivation like departs right down the middle of the population, right? Where it's very different for men and for women. So for example, men, they are generally motivated more so by things that are very coercive and aggressive. So think about how there's someone like David Goggins, where he likes to essentially, he calls people a little bitch, and he blew up on social media, and that really, really worked, right? So that was an instance of where how you see men are motivated. And then for women, it's more so very self-affirming, and this is how they get their motivation as a general population. Of course, there's always exceptions, but this is generally where you see a woman get their motivation.
Right now. Hold on.
Oh, you can't hear me?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Maybe it's on my end. Hold on. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes.
Oh, it's back.
Okay.
No idea what happened. Anyway, we'll continue on.
Yeah. Well, I guess, where did you last hear me? And then I can roll off.
You were saying Goggins is calling people a little bitch.
Yeah. So David Goggins calls everyone a little bitch, and he blew up on social media because he has this very coercive style, but this only generally works for men. Whereas for women, a lot of the motivation that you see, it's very self-affirming. So the way that I've conceptualized it is that, so again, for men and women, obviously there's exceptions, but men look at greatness as something that's ahead of them and they have to grind to get towards. Whereas for women, it's generally viewed that greatness is already inside them. They just have to realize it and let it flourish. So that might sound like a trivial difference, but it does actually manifest itself pretty differently when you want to motivate someone to better their lives, specifically in fitness. So I would say that was one of the main things that I've learned about not treating motivation as a monolith. And what that means is, when you want to create a piece of technology that motivates people, you have to tap into that, right? So the best way to do that generally is, you're never going to be able to know what motivates everybody, only they know that themselves. So instead of trying to present to them motivation on a silver platter and say, this should motivate you because this is what I expect to motivate you, you have to give people the tools to take what already motivates them and then turn that into an action. So that's the idea behind my app, at least, right? Or like, it's a component of it, where individuals can import social media, which is where a lot of these videos are coming from. And this is what a lot of people resonate with, where you can import these videos and you can do two things with it. So the first is creating push notifications, super easy, right? So for example, you can get a push notification in the morning that from David Goggins telling you, do you want to be a little bitch today? And then later in the afternoon, if you're like, let's say in a meditation zone, you can get a different reminder of like, okay, now it's like time to like explore yourself and reflect and all that. So maybe not necessarily motivation, but the point is that you have a mindset throughout the day, and those mindsets, they shift, and you will not have the same kind of motivation that will work for you throughout the day. But of course, you scroll through social media all day and you come across all kinds of content that's going to resonate with you at different points in the day. So you can schedule that, right? And then the second part of it is by importing all of these things from social media into my app, I get a good psychological profile of the things that work for you. So you can work backwards from that, which is kind of like the general point of the app, is that fitness is such a massive construct that everyone approaches at it differently because they all have different goals, that if you wanted to build something for everyone, which is something they always tell you never to do in business. So I didn't. Instead, I built an app that let you build the tools for whatever it is that you need to do, whether that was motivation or fitness. So of course you can import whatever kind of fitness content you want, and it'll adapt to you on that. And then it'll look at your psychology and I adapt further. And then it'll look at your nutrition and kind of combine all that together. So I think when you have like these three components of someone's like nutrition, their motivation, and their fitness, you have a pretty good idea of how they're going to work towards their goals. And from there, you can actually probably be more effective in terms of, well, how do I reward someone in the app? What kind of messaging do I give them? Something that Duolingo, for example, has found great success in. They don't do it based off a psychological perspective, but Duolingo has found a way where it could be 11:55 at night and you're on your way out to, a bar or a club with your friends, and you're going to be like, oh shit, I need to do my Duolingo. And whatever that captures, it's because like nobody liked learning languages in high school, but now you have people obsessed with completing their Italian lesson right before midnight strikes. So there's something there where people do want to motivate themselves, and it doesn't always have to be for something that's easy, but because that's in there, there is a messaging combination that you can get to them that will bring that out in them. But you have to learn about them first before you can get there. So just giving someone an app and saying, well, here, figure it out, you're not going to learn about them. So that's what I think is important with AI specifically, is that it now allows us to, mostly for Gen Z and millennials, because they're the ones using social media the most, understand where they're coming from, and then you work off of that rather than trying to present them with a path that we could say is beaten and then like expect people to go down that. And when they all quit the gym in March, then not be too shocked that everyone's leaving. And then when they get that burst of motivation again in summer, and then it disappears after a month, and we have this cycle. So I think that is the key technology here, is that AI allows us to understand people's social media use. And then whatever you decide to use that with, whether that's fitness or lifestyle or your fashion, your cooking, your travel, whatever it is, that is the key there, in my point of view.
Do you think that people tend to be honest when they give their assessment? Like, all right, yeah, I want to live longer. I want to live more healthy. I want to get rid of my belly fat or whatever it is. But really, is that really my motivation? Maybe my motivation is like, hey, I really want to look good in a swimsuit when I'm at the beach. So maybe I'm lying to myself, because I've already gotten all this inspiration from everywhere that it's about health. It's not about how you look. It's about how you feel. Then the look comes afterwards. But, girls are checking each other out in bikinis and saying, I want to look like this person. When you're building a model that uses AI, machine learning, does it take into account, not just its own hallucinations, but are people being truthful in the first place?
So I think the idea behind the social imports is that it ties into something very important, which is if you want people to build new habits, you have to work off of their existing habits. So right now, Gen Z and millennials all have this existing habit essentially of scrolling and sharing and saving. This already exists in them, right? And what often happens is that people will be scrolling through their social media. And for example, one girl may see another girl in a bikini on social media. That's probably most likely where she's going to see it. And they'll have a burst of motivation in that moment. And it's fleeting. So you have to allow people to capture that motivation. So I wouldn't call it a lie. I would call it that motivation is not this perpetual thing that we can always have. Then that just applies to life, right? Like sometimes you're not going to be motivated to like execute on whatever your career is, but then you have discipline to fall back on, right? But you can't always have discipline right out of the bat. So you have to help people build the discipline. So people will have motivation and they have bursts of motivation. So you have to give them the tool when that burst of motivation comes, like on their feed, if they're seeing a girl that like whose body they want to look like, or this, I mean, applies to men. This is literally everybody. Where you see that and you have this burst of motivation in the moment, and before it fleets, you can now act on it. So now, not only have we tied into this person's habit of scrolling and sharing, but another really important thing about technology is that people value it more when they feel like they're making incremental investments in it. So every time you hit share and you capture that fleeting moment of motivation, and you know it's not going to just disappear in the ether, you're essentially on some psychological level sending that motivation to the app for when you want to use it, and you have that burst of motivation again, but you have the time or the way to execute it, then you'll be able to do it better. But if you're just like letting all these fleeting moments of motivation disappear, and then you ask someone, are you really motivated? It might look like they're lying because of course it's fleeting, but they're not lying. They're just like everybody else, where sometimes we have that burst and it goes away. So let's help them keep that energy. Just let's store it somewhere else for when they're ready to act on it again. And then use that messaging, of course, to help them act on it, because they might not always, but that's the general idea.
Yeah, understood. I want to go a little bit into your own sort of journey and origin story. Where did you grow up?
I was born and raised in Miami, Florida.
Got it. And family-wise, were your parents together? Do you have siblings?
Yeah, so no, I was raised just with my mom. So my parents are divorced, but I lived in Miami with my mom, and I don't have any siblings. But yeah, so I think that's pretty much.
So,
and my parents are both I'm first generation American. They both moved from, my mother is from France and my dad is from Italy, so they both moved here.
got it. So when you were a kid, what were your interests? Were you like a reader? Were you into art? Were you more into sports? Like what kind of kid were you?
I would say what my primary fascination was, I mean, like there was a lot of things to it, but like this is probably what like would be the best medium to describe it. Is I was obsessed with Legos, so building things and creating things, which translated into adulthood, of course. So I would definitely say like mechanical engineering was probably what I was more interested in. I wasn't doing any coding or anything like that as a kid. Actually, I didn't do it until essentially up until college, where I tried to get a degree in computer science, completely failed out of the degree, and then got a job in finance on Wall Street. And then I did that for 6 months, could not stand it. And so I spent the latter 3 months of that job studying like crazy to learn how to code. And then I got my first job at WeWork. I was an employee, not like working at a WeWork. I was an employee of WeWork. And in that year, which was 2019, I changed jobs 4 times, where I would like study every 3 months for like the next level up. So I was on the data track, right? So my first job was a data analyst, then I became a data engineer, then a big data engineer, and then a data scientist. So that was like the track that I took, essentially.
Did you see yourself more as I'm an entrepreneur and I'm sort of a polymath where, I'm trying to gain knowledge from all these different places and perfect things from these different opportunities? Or did you see yourself more as a builder? Like, I'm going to build layers. So I'm going to get something here. I'm going to, like a Lego set, I'm going to keep building up. Did you have any, thoughts about that when you were switching jobs?
Like, are you asking like what did I prefer, having expertise in multiple domains rather than mastery
Expertise
in
in
one?
multiple domains, and mastering some doesn't have to be just one. And then looking at yourself as, I have sort of a mindset of an entrepreneur. Like, I need to do this on my own because I'm not fitting in exactly into these, in these companies, even though I'm extracting knowledge and information I can utilize on my own. Or did you see it as like, my goal is to be a builder, an engineer, but what I need to do is I need to get building blocks from all these other places so I can build them up. So now I have a solid foundation.
I definitely view myself as an entrepreneur before an engineer. Engineering is a means to an end, from my point of view. That being said, unfortunately, I'm a much better engineer than I am an entrepreneur. At least I found a lot more success in engineering, like very notable success, like published papers and things like that. Whereas like making a startup has been very, like the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life, right? So I would say that I view myself as an entrepreneur that use engineering as a means to an end, but I'm definitely better at the latter than the former.
In going through, I don't know if this is if you share in this journey. So I had all these different jobs and I was trying to figure out what it is that I wanted to do, but I kind of felt myself not really fitting into all these different jobs. I really thought that, and even from school, I really thought that I'm wired differently. Like this is not really conducive. That's the way, people are, and it's fine. But I saw myself sort of on the outskirt of that. And I could fit in if I wanted to, but I really didn't like to be employed. Not that I like to be unemployed, but I didn't like to be employed. I like to do my own. And you're absolutely right. Being an entrepreneur is like the most difficult thing that you can possibly do. And people don't understand what it is and takes over your life. And people talk about work-life balance. The people that talk about work-life balance are not entrepreneurs. They don't understand there is no balance. It is this and nothing else, pretty much, very little. So I wondered, was there a moment where you came to that realization? And if you did, and if you didn't, it's fine too, that you're sort of wired a little differently?
I don't, because I definitely knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I never compartmentalized it as me being wired differently. I just thought like, oh well, everyone wants to kind of like start their own thing, which like, okay, maybe that's not on face value 100% true, but there is a grain of truth in it where a lot of people want to have their own thing. So I didn't think I was like too crazy for that. What I thought was different about me was that I had like essentially the mental illness to go after it to this insane degree, have it take over my life, which I think was the difference. But wanting it on its own was not making me special. You know what I mean?
Right, right. Were there any mentors along the way in your path that sort of guided you to that? Because you've done different things in your life, and they sort of are connecting. But was there somebody who said to you, you know what, think about doing it this way? Or were there mentors that you didn't really connect with, but maybe you read books or studied or watched anything? Was there anybody along the way?
Unfortunately, no. I really wish I was looking for mentors too. I still am. Essentially, like right now, I'm applying to a program to find some mentorship right now. But I have never really had a mentor. So I make a lot of mistakes. I learn from them very quickly, and I don't make them twice, but I do make a lot of them. And I definitely think maybe 30% of them, 40% of them could have been avoidable had I had someone that could have said, don't do that. Like just like even my entrepreneurial journey, like a lot of the things that I did to get here was like trial and error. It's been like 5 years, right? Where like the company's iterated and changed over time, but like a lot of those iterations could have been skipped over had I had someone that might have had the foresight or gone through it before. So unfortunately, no, I've never had a mentor.
Well, if anybody's listening, they want to connect with you after
I
this,
would love
and they
that.
want to
Yeah,
mentor
that'd
you,
be great.
so we'll put it out in the universe. You mentioned this briefly, but I just wonder setbacks, right? How do you handle setbacks now versus how maybe you've handled them when you were younger?
So I guess what do you mean by a setback?
Well, I mean, it depends on your definition of a setback, right? So you can say, I'm a big proponent of you win or you learn kind of thing. So mistakes and all that other stuff, they don't phase me like that because it's all a learning process. I don't really have an emotional attachment, maybe. And I'm not saying that it doesn't feel like a gut punch when you first get hit with it, but you overcome it and say, that's the process. So I want to know if over time, if that, getting punched by the entrepreneurship, if you have a different response to that when you did when you were first
Yeah,
starting out.
I would definitely say so. So I'm going to take the word setback and I'm going to just insert the word failure into it because that's how I conceptualize it, and like it'll make my answer make more sense. But essentially, so this is how I've dealt with failure, where I've like changed. When I was younger, let's say so 23, like my first time starting a company, as I was like, let's say whatever failure was coming through along the way, I had like a lot of hubris about it, where I would say that, well, the failure, perhaps not like hubris, but to a degree, because I was like, I can just keep on hammering away at this, and it's not really a failure. I just have to keep on hammering and like digging myself into a hole and going in a direction that was just wrong, right? Like obviously you have to have tenacity and persistence and believe in what you do, but it comes to a head where you're like, maybe it's time to like take a step back and reflect, which is what I feel that I do now. But when I was younger, I was just hammering it away. I was like, okay, I can engineer my way out of this. And like just some things you can't, right? And you don't always necessarily want to digest that fact because you think that, well, if I'm the engineer that I think I am, I should be able to solve this. And sometimes it's not, that's not the problem. It's not like some kind of computational level of intelligence is going to fix it. Sometimes it just takes like maturity and you have to step back and be like, this is not the way to approach this. So I think that would be the main difference, is that before I would like not give up on whatever it is. And not to say that I'm giving up now, but I'm quicker to reflect on whatever failure or setback has come across my way rather than trying to power through it and then probably digging myself further into a hole.
I think there's a certain level of maturity in stubbornness and being able to recognize in yourself that you're being stubborn and what are you doing for the greater good of the solution instead of like, grinding through a problem. It's okay to pivot. And I understand exactly what you're saying. Earlier in my career, that's exactly what I would do. I was saying, nope, we're going to grind through this. And it's okay. It's okay to take a step back sometimes, as long as you continue to take, two steps forward. I wanted to understand or learn maybe a little bit about your own wellness journey and your own wellness routine. Has it changed since you started your business, your company? Like from what you're learning from what you're doing, did it change your own wellness journey? Or also, in addition to that, being an entrepreneur, because you're so busy, did you have to modify the way that you go about your own health and wellness journey as well?
It's tough. So let me put this forward. Exercise and fitness is a huge part of my mental health and happiness. And when you make a career out of your catharsis, you're bound to run into problems. So, for example, there was a very long time where it was very tough for me to go into a gym because I could not enter the gym without thinking about work. And maybe that would have been good, but if that's where you're supposed to have your peace of mind, that was very troublesome for me. So you could almost say that I took steps to separate my fitness journey from my entrepreneurial journey. And it's crazy because like they're supposed to overlap, but I found that I was excelling more like for the first, because it's always been a fit company, right? Like it's been doing different things, but it's always been a fitness company, which means it always ties back to the gym, which means the gym is a trigger for whatever stress or anxiety the company is bringing me at that moment. So, so the first year or two, a year and a half that I was doing Olympus, I would just like go in the gym and like, so this is actually probably a better way to contextualize it all, is like what I was doing at the time, what my fitness company was. The first iteration of my company was building gym hardware. There were cameras. You could set them up all over the gym and they would track what you do. And then the second iteration of the company was, instead of cameras, they were little accelerometers that you could bring all over the gym. And the idea was that I would sell them to gyms and they would live on the equipment. And I would never go to the gym and test my own product because I'm like, I cannot ruin my workout by getting stressed out that like there's a bug or a glitch. And I just couldn't fathom it. So I would have to go work out twice a day, essentially, where I would do my like 2 hours for me. And then I would have to go back at night with my laptop to the gym and then start working out again, debugging and coding the pod, because they had to be separate things. And even like that, even now, right? Like my app works pretty well for the gym and tracking. I literally just cannot use my own app while I'm working out. It just ruins the workout for me because I cannot separate the two. So if I'm being honest, I've put a pretty big wall in between my fitness journey and my entrepreneurial journey. It's the honest truth.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I know that some people, they can't separate the work from the leisure. And if you're connecting to fitness as sort of, this is my mental and physical reset, like I need this in order to feel good mentally and physically, but you're also connecting that this is your business. I can see where there would be some interference. I wanted to ask you about AI. Like when you first created Olympus, was it always Olympus AI? Did you always have machine learning in mind that you're going to train the models, or was this something that started coming out after the fact that you were trying to leverage machine learning to be able to personalize these experiences for people as the technology has been improving?
Yeah, no. So the first iteration of the company is AI. It was computer vision models that I built from scratch. So that's how that was working for the cameras.
Mhm.
Essentially, when I transitioned over to the pods, it was machine learning for recommending exercises, but it wasn't AI. But the name was already set because I had already paid for the LLC, so it was going to be Olympus AI. And then we circle back to this version where now it's not an AI built and it's not a machine learning I built, but it is AI again. But now it's built on top of open AI, right? So I would say that that's kind of how been the journey of where AI has come in and out and in what form.
What's what's like if you're training your model, or since it's open AI, the model's already training itself. What's the sort of behavioral science or uh, any form of psychologist that's imported into the platform? So it's sort of along the ways we were started talking about this in the first place of motivation. Are there any other, behavioral or psychology that is incorporated in the app or to learn people's habits and sort of start being their partner in their journey based on their habits?
So at present, because the current iteration of the app has been launched for 1 month, essentially. So it's very, very new. Because like I said, it was a hardware app up until 1 month ago. And now I've completely pivoted the company because again, like I was talking about the stubbornness. But I had to take a step back and be like, okay, well, what are people actually doing in fitness right now? Instead of me trying to cast my vision on the world. So everyone was using social media. So I built this app in about a few weeks because it actually wasn't all that difficult to build the app, to be fair. I mean, there was like a few things like getting data out of like TikTok and YouTube. They were really not happy about that. But outside of that, um, I had just built the app to right now, it like will look at what exercises, like for example, it's not like just like gym exercises. It's, do you want to do Pilates? Do you want to do yoga? Do you want to run? Do you want to do athletics? And then what are your preferences dietarily? And there are all these things that like every time the AI gives you a recommendation or builds a routine for you. So the idea is that the like you import all this content, and whether it's nutrition or fitness, and then you send that to what I call Zeus, that will build you a meal plan and it'll build you a routine from that. And the idea is that it's supposed to take all of your preferences, and when it does that, it will build a routine that is supposed to be catered to that, where you can also add a very like specific goals. So, for example, making like a 6 week routine, I don't think is effective because you have to see where you feel at the end of every week. Some people disagree with me on that vehemently. They're like, you have to have a 6 week routine and then end of story. But I limited the app to, you can only make a routine once a week. You can only make a 1 week long routine. And that way, like essentially this is the thing, right? AI is great and it's very powerful, but the more output tokens you need from the AI, the diminishing quality of the output is. So if you make a 6 week program and you expect your AI to make a 6 week program, it's going to come out like garbage. So if you want it to come out better, you have to tell the AI, narrow in, focus on 1 week, 3 days, or 1 day, which is the options that they have in the app. And here's the information about who they are. And this is their history. And this is their PRs and all that. Because you have to give it a lot of context. So the more context you give it and the more tokens you give it, some argue that's good. But when the output gets too big, then you start running into problems. So you have to like make sure that your output tokens, like the output of the AI, you can put in as much as you want, like within reason. Like don't like bombard it with information either, because then it also starts to get confused. And then you'll also run into trouble with like cost. So for example, like the O3 model in OpenAI versus the O1 versus 3.0 and all these things, it really does depend how much content them like will change the results and their output. Because if you are giving, let's say O1 like 100,000 input tokens, and then it's like returning 5,000 versus 50,000, like those costs are astronomical. Whereas if you're giving it less context, you can give it to a cheaper model. And if you're giving it less of a window to produce on, then you can also get better results. So it's like this entire game where you're like optimizing costs and input and output tokens to get like the most bang for your buck, as well as like speed, which is not like it has to be like super fast, because like people will accept to wait like a minute, whatever, for the routine generation. But the real key here is that you don't want to make it spit out a 6-week program, because it's going to lose a lot of the personalization, which is like a problem with a lot of apps. Like you put it in, like you fill in a questionnaire, and then they give you what they tell you is a personalized plan, and it's all nonsense. Like there's just no way it's personalized. So what you have to do is, to make something truly personalized, you have to make it modular. To make it modular, it happens to just work with AI, that it also works better if it's modular. So when you combine these factors, plus like on the business side of like lowering your costs and getting the most bang for your buck, I would say this in its entirety is how I would like say you can approach psychology and AI. It's like, give it everything it needs to do, but, and like also as a system, so this is, I guess, the last factor that people might not know about, is that when people are interacting with OpenAI through an app, they're interacting not with ChatGPT, they're interacting with an assistant. And that assistant is like a subset of ChatGPT where you give it system instructions. So just a very light examples, like you say, you are a personal trainer that needs to do X, Y, and Z. And like you're giving fitness advice, you need to be motivational, whatever the case is, right? And then of course, that the longer those system instructions are, that's fine, because it's different than your input and output tokens. So like, for example, Olympus AI has 12 assistants that do different things in the app. They all have their own very unique system instructions. And you want to make sure that your system instructions tie in maybe what you were referring to as like the psychological aspect. Like I can give you all this information, but what kind of psychology, or like how it's supposed to approach that information, is what you would give in the system instructions to the assistant. So I would say that's kind of where it ties into, where like you're not just feeding all this information to it like you would in a normal fitness app, but you're also feeding it to an assistant that is like specifically designed to say, okay, because I have different assistants for different like subsets of people, right? So like for women who are just starting versus men that have been in the gym for 6 months, those are different assistants. So they're approaching their workout routines very differently, but they're always capped at 1 week and they always get the same input parameters. So I think this is, as an overall view, is how you kind of approach making a better AI from a psychology perspective. Not necessarily just psychology, because the AI itself doesn't have psychology, but tying in those preferences of yours. And that just works though for like fitness and nutrition. I am still working through, and like this is something I have to figure out as I iterate through the app, is how I can tie people's motivational quotes into their meal plans. So for a gym routine, once you're actually in the routine, you don't need to be motivated to get to the next exercise. Like maybe you do, but like that's really not the problem. The problem, like it's like once you're in the gym, you're kind of there. It's like getting you back to the gym, so that's a separate thing. But I think for meal plans, for example, because you do that 3 times a day, you have to like be able to motivate people to cook the healthy dish versus buy the unhealthy, cheap option. So that's, I think, where I'm going to try and target next, as far as the psychology of not just giving them push notifications and like learning about them, but also like tying it into like, well, how can I like motivate them to do this extra habit of cooking? Because that is like the best way to be healthy, is like you cook your own food. So I think that's what I'm going to be exploring. But again, the app's only been out for a month, so
Yeah.
I have to figure out some things before I get there.
Yeah, just show them visuals of, how this person who gets food delivered or buys food, what they look like versus, what the person's cooking for themselves. Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying, because, we use machine learning and AI in my company, and it's always like this balance of compute costs. Like how much is it gonna cost to be able to do what you want to do? And one of the things I think you sort of mentioned it and glided through it, this notion of feedback, right? Because and you're absolutely right, there's so many programs out there that are personalizing, but they're really not. It's a cookie cutter approach. You're in a bucket and you're personalized. There's 3 different options, so you fit one of those options, but it's not really personal. To me, personal is much more along the lines what you're saying is, based on the initial input, here's your suggestion, here's your routine, however, it's good to have feedback. Once you have feedback on what's the efficacy, how well is this working for me? I like it, or I like certain aspects of it. Now you start building a personalized model where it's learning from you. And now it's going to say, well, based on that input, I'm going to give you this. And I may have not started out this way, but because now we're interacting together, now it's getting more and more honed in and becoming much more personalized. So I mean, I always felt that this is sort of what's missing in this whole AI personalization, because I completely agree with you that people spit out and they use this word, personal, where it really isn't. Maybe it's personalized, but not individualized in a way. And that's where I think the difference is, makes a lot of sense. In going forward, and I hate predicting the future, but do you see Olympus being sort of like, this is what my go-to app is daily if I want to exercise at home, whether I want to go to the gym, whether I want to hike? Because, AI is moving so rapidly. Who knows if, you sign up for a gym membership, your app may be the thing that you actually get when you sign up for a gym membership. You collaborate with, I don't know, LA Fitness or something like that, or an Equinox, and now you have your own trainer assistant that's with you all the time. And then you have other individuals who are at the gym who can go and adjust and modify that behavior, which your trainer, your AI will learn from again. So I don't know what your thoughts are on the future, but that's sort of what I was thinking about, a really great use of the technology in the next iteration of this progress of AI.
Yeah, so I think like specifically for Olympus, right? Like obviously AI as a whole has this wide future,
Yeah.
but specifically for Olympus, I think that the idea behind the company is that one of the biggest flaws with OpenAI right now is that you cannot paste a social media link in there and have it digest that for you. So Olympus AI fixed that, right? And I don't think Olympus AI will be the last company to do that. I think that, like, for example, there's a company called Resimi, and they do something similar for recipes. And I suspect that they'll be doing it. There's going to be companies that do it for fashion, where you import your fashion, and it'll give you the recommendations on that, and there'll be all these things, right? So the long-term goal of Olympus AI is that I think that there is a lot of avenues for being able to create a tailored. So another thing that's quite interesting is that when you share content even outside of Instagram and TikTok, your feed starts to adjust to that, right? So if you're sharing motivational content that you want to use later, rather than just like scrolling by it on Instagram, because the Instagram weighs a share far more than a like in its algorithm. So you're sharing all these content, fitness, and nutrition videos, your social media will start to get more positive and it'll get healthier and healthier, right? And I think that Olympus's long-term goal is, if I'm being quite honest with you, there's like two routes that it could take. There's this where it becomes your true psychological partner, where it's like just learning about you, and then we find other ways to learn about you. And then it kind of ties into this other hardware component, which is something that I'd eventually like to get to. And this is what I think was my biggest problem in the previous iterations of the company. And this is ideally where I think the future of AI is going to be. You know what the AI pin is? Have you ever seen or heard of that concept? Is this pin that people are wearing, and like it's like you can bring AI anywhere with you. It was a complete disaster. It didn't work at all. But that was just the first iteration of it. What I suspect will be the future of AI and how Olympus will tie into that is that the biggest problem that I had with tracking in gyms was that it was impossible to get every camera at every angle or put a pod on every single equipment in the right spot or whatever, all these things. So essentially what was the problem at hand was I need to track everything you do in the gym, and I cannot change any of your habits. Like I could not give you a pod. I can't expect you to go fiddle around with an app. You have to be able to go into that gym, do your entire workout, and nothing has changed for you like at face value. So how do you accomplish that? Well, this is what I think is going to be the next big piece of hardware in AI. And Olympus will be like, I've already started building algorithms to hop on that, is that and this is, I came up with this just for the gym, but like this is going to work everywhere, is that right now I was like, okay, well, how can I get a POV view of what someone is doing in the gym at all times without them having to bring their phone around with them? And then, so what would you think would be a way to get a POV view of everything that you do in the gym?
Well, for me, I would say that you integrate with either your Apple Watch or your wearable device, because you can
I mean,
get
like a
instant.
literal POV view, like where you can see what the weights that are being done, the reps, everything. How would you do it?
I guess you're gonna have to wear some sort of camera.
Yeah. So the problem is that it's very ridiculous to expect anyone to wear a camera.
Yeah.
The closest thing we have right now are the Meta Ray bands, where you have a camera in the
Yeah.
lens, and that's great. It's cool. People are not going to wear glasses to the gym. What is everybody already wearing to the gym?
Uh,
That's a
shoes.
piece of technology. Nope, it's a piece of technology.
I'm trying to think what I wear to the gym.
We're both wearing them now.
My earbuds or whatever
Yes.
I have. Yeah,
So
headphones,
the
earbuds.
next, yeah, exactly, the headphones.
Yeah.
The next wave of AI technology, what I suspect it will be, this is my prediction, of course I could be wrong, is that we will have cameras in our buds that will have a POV view of our life. And then, for example, in the gym, when you're walking through the gym and I have a POV view of everything that you do in the gym, I can just run those frames through an AI and give you fully track your workout with no manual entry whatsoever. And I suspect that this is going to escalate to other things where people will have their earbuds in or whatever, and they'll be able to go throughout their day and AI will tell them about their day, unless they wear the glasses, of course. But if
Yeah.
they're wearing earpods, this is how I suspect you can really capture that in the gym. And I think there's going to be some kind of market there where people will be, where I suspect Apple will probably want to be the first movers on this, where they're going to be using like very deep computer vision tied with Apple Intelligence, where your AirPods are going to be recording everything you do. And it's going to be tying into different things of your life. And it's going to tell you about yourself. It's going to tell you a lot about yourself. How much are you, like, time are you spending in sunlight? Who are you interacting with? Things like that. So that can work for the gym. And I would like Olympus AI to hop on that train, essentially, for when they do put cameras in headphones, which I suspect they will. I would like to be the first app that can automatically track everything you do in the gym. So that would be the next step of AI, in my
Very
opinion.
cool. Yeah, I like that idea. I think I'm playing devil's advocate in that people talk about privacy. So my company's in the genetic testing analysis, precision health and wellness space. And when 23andMe announced their bankruptcy, I mean, I was getting calls and emails and our data, people are going to take our data. So, having cameras in your headphones or your ear pods or AirPods or anything like that, people can then maybe assume that this is invasive. And are you going to wear a camera in a locker room and etc. And you're going to find out information about me. So where is this sort of trade-off? I already know what side I'm on. I'm just kind of trying to have a conversation, playing devil's advocate to that, because
Yeah.
that's what people are concerned about. Is like, my privacy, my privacy. There's got to be some sort of trade-off and tipping point.
So I would say that the reality is Gen Z doesn't give a fuck about their privacy. They don't. I don't either. I already expect that there's cameras recording everywhere. This is a generation of generations past. Like,
Yeah.
Gen Z is very much accepted that like their privacy is not at the same level, and they're okay with it because we get benefits from that. We trade our privacy because we get the benefits from it. So, all right, and in the locker room, for example, it's a very easy technology fix. As soon as it detects it's in a locker room, it just shuts down the camera. It's super
Yeah.
easy. But Gen Z doesn't care. Most millennials don't even care. Like, especially on the younger side, I'm 28. I'm still a millennial though. I don't care. Nobody does.
Yeah, no,
Like,
and I agree. I agree because your every single device that you have around you is listening to you and serving you up ads. So I always found it fascinating. And on the genetic side, I always found it fascinating. I'm like, if your DNA is that special, they can just swab your Starbucks cup or get a hair sample. I mean, let me get my beard hair or something like that because I don't
yeah.
have hair. So I never thought, but it is a concern. I'm glad you brought that up. That this is a old people's concern, not the younger generation.
Yeah, it's crazy, but it's true, right? So it's like we have to like, it's like when you build technology, it's like you have to cater to what the new generation is going to do. And it's easy to fall into the trap of like, well, most of the people are of the older generation, especially when you're like 23, most people are older than you, right?
Yeah.
So, but like now I'm 28 and like you have all these Gen Zers that are like, they're professionals and they have money now and they get to make decisions and they impact the world. So it's like, you better start building stuff for them and like also take into account what they do and don't care about. They don't care about their privacy, but they do care about like tracking in the gym, because Gen Z is also more obsessed with like looking good than ever. And they're more obsessed with fitness than any of the previous generations. So they will happily give up their privacy, which they already don't give a shit about, to get a little bit more fit in the gym and whatever more convenience that they offer them. So that's my point of view.
I agree, and I'm glad you brought that up. All right, so I want to shift a little bit to ask some questions that I ask all my guests, unrelated to our business, more music related stuff. So if you remember, recall, what was the very first concert that you attended?
The very first concert I attended was Ultra Music Festival in 2013. So that was incredible. So
What was the last concert you attended?
I went to a concert on Saturday, also in Bayfront Park, for Rufus Du Sol.
Oh,
So that was great too.
yeah, I love them. All right, so for next year, you can only listen to 5 albums. Now, you don't have to remember the name of the album. It could be a the Soul album. What will be those 5 albums?
Let me think. So it's difficult because I primarily listen to electronic music,
Yeah.
and some of the best electronic music made does not come from an album. It comes from independent DJs remixing very popular songs. So they don't really come out with albums. That being said, I can put that aside and say my favorite artists that have albums. Uh, so I don't know their album's name, but I listen to it pretty religiously. Hippie Sabotage. I don't know if you've heard of them.
Mhm.
I would listen to Flume.
Uh-huh.
I would listen to Excision, Crank Dat, and Revolve. Those last 3 are dubstep artists, which is my primary music. I'd say my music consumption is 60% electronic, 20% rap, and 20% Latin music.
Dubstep too, right? Yeah.
Love dubstep. I love it. Live for it. So
Yeah. Love. Cool. Okay. Please describe what your room looked like growing up.
my room was covered in all of the Legos that I had built, and on one side, and then on the back side, it was covered in art. And then in the middle, I had a bed and a hammock that in my room, which I never used, and I had a fish tank that I was very, very proud of. But the point of my room was that everywhere you look, and my house is still like this now, where everywhere you look, there is art everywhere. Like just to give you an instance, right? Like there is art here, and then there's more art there, and then my entire house is covered in art. Like everywhere you look, I'm sure you can see behind me too. Like there's art up there. There's Banksy. I have like these like gummy bears. So the idea is actually I haven't really shifted that much as an adult. Is that I like there to be visual stimulation everywhere I look. So that's my room as an adult and as a kid. So
When you were a kid, what was the kind of art? Was it like that type of art, or was it like posters of musicians or anything like that?
no, it was like canvas art, pop art, and the art that my mom made, because my mom's an artist as well. So I have a few of her pieces in this house as well. So a few of them were my mom's, a few of them were just art that I liked that I purchased, or been purchased
Yeah.
for me. But I would say no posters or anything like that.
Did you ever dabble in art? Did you paint or anything like that yourself?
So I dabbled as a kid. Like I would mess around with the canvases. I
Yeah.
would say like the Legos are my creative outlet, because I was not just doing the kits, I was making them from scratch. And then as an adult, like for example, I like to do like an occasional art class. Like I went to a rug making class, which I really liked, and I made like a Salvador Dali rug, like the clock, the mountain clock. So I made that in a rug. So that was super cool, right? Or like a pottery. So like I'll do that maybe once every 6 months. It's not like I'm exactly doing it all the time, but I do like doing it. I like having a creative outlet. I treat my apartment, like the decorations in my apartment, as my creative outlet, my primary creative outlet, and the lighting as well. which a lot of people don't view as a creative outlet, but lighting is more important, arguably, than the art, I think, in a house. Because like you could remove all the art from the house, but if you have the proper lighting, it could still be a nice setting. But even if your house is like covered door to door in art and it's like in like hospital lighting, it's the worst place ever. So between lighting and art in my house, I would say that's my creative outlet.
Got it. Cool. Eduardo, where can people find out more about Olympus AI? Where can they reach out to you or connect with you, or anything else you want to share?
Yeah, for sure. So if they want to check out Olympus AI, it's of course on the app and Google Play Store under the name Olympus AI. But if you want to see a little bit more of like our content that we've made and some like explanations a little further about the app, you can go on our Instagram, which is olympus.ai.fitness. And then we have our website, which is olympusai.fitness. And then you can always connect with me on Instagram. My name's Eduardo Vitale, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn as well.
Cool. And for my audience, thank you again for listening. Don't forget to like and share and subscribe and all that good stuff that you guys know. I mean, thank you so much for all the wonderful reviews and the stars. Keep them coming, even if they're not all 5 stars, which I do prefer. But if there's a 4 somewhere, there's always room to improve. Just give me some feedback. And thank you for buying my book as well, Making Cannabis Personal, on Amazon. Eduardo, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. I think, this is something that we also need to start looking at as a shift. Like I'm in my 50s, so I'm a much older generation, but, embracing technology and embracing AI and the future of it's only going to iterate. So if you're scared of it, get unscared of it. I grew up in an era where the World Wide Web was coming out. Everybody was freaking out. Oh my God, internet, email is going to get rid of mail. It's not. It's only technology to be able to embrace and be able to utilize for things that we do in our daily lives. So I think what you're doing is the future, and it should be treated as that. But if you're not jumping on the bandwagon, then the train's going to leave without you. So that's kind of my 2 thoughts.
Yeah, could not agree more. Let's hope that we can get as many people on the train as possible this time around. So
cool, man. Appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Hey, everyone. So does anybody know what greening out means? I've been the recipient of so many calls over the years of people greening out. That means they took too much THC and had an adverse reaction. So I always recommend other things, but nothing really concrete. Now I can. There's a solution. It is called Antidose. Antidose.com is quick. It's rapid. It works immediately, safe, and effective. So I love my props. If you are toasty or you are burnt, that's the difference. Now, I also love the 1 gummy, 2 gummy, 3 gummy floor. So just be aware, very narrow therapeutic window. You know exactly what you can take now if you've taken too much. Once again, it's Antidose at antidose.com. Get yours today. Hey everyone, thank you for watching and listening. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button, share this episode, and hit that bell. Like, comment. I so appreciate that. And check me out on social under Len May or Len May DNA. Find out more on LinkedIn or lenmaycoaching.com. And remember, everything is personal.